Almost 3.5 billion people already use the internet, and some 500 new users are added every minute. But even as we flock to this technology and all that it gives us access to, there are growing concerns about how our online lives can be open to scrutiny and even attack. Fen Osler Hampson is Director of Global Security and Politics Program at the Center for International Governance Innovation, that's CIGI. He's also co-author of a new book called Look Who's Watching: Surveillance, Treachery, and Trust Online. And Fen Osler Hampson joins us now on the risks and opportunities for the internet in an age of declining trust. Welcome, nice to have you here.
My pleasure.
I had you on the program numerous times from Ottawa, but I think this is the first time we've had you in that chair. Mr. Director, sir, you've got the wide shot up. Look at this video board in the background here. It's just up and up and up, like it's 10 every second, right? 10 new people every second. You've described in the book the internet like a rainforest. How's it like a rainforest?
It's like a rainforest in the sense that, in a double sense. One is that there are lots of predators who are there to steal your data, compromise your privacy, and they tend to be in the recesses of the rainforest. They hide in the shadows of the rainforest. They're like the owls, and there are many different kinds of owls.
That sounds very nefarious, though.
It's very nefarious, but at the same time, the rainforest is a very rich place. It's bountiful, and the internet is much like the rainforest. It's bountiful, and if you stand at the top of the rainforest, you have magnificent views, just as if in an open democracy you have enormous opportunities to access information, talk to your friends, do pretty much anything you want online.
Well, just as the rainforest is foundational to the survival of our planet, you point out the internet is foundational to our lives right now and will be more so in the future. More so means what? How can it be more foundational to our lives than it is right now?
Well, right now, Steve, we use the internet largely as a mode of communication, an instrument of communication. We use it to chat with our friends on Facebook. We use it to send emails at the office. Many of us use it for online banking, for buying goods and services. But that's primarily as a communication tool, as a tool of commerce. We're on the cusp of a new revolution. It might be called the third revolution of the internet, where the ordinary objects of daily life, your toothbrush, your car, the lights in your house, perhaps even your clothing one day, are going to have a virtual presence online. Everything is going to be hooked up to the internet, managed through the internet. And we're just on the edge of that revolution. The internet right now, as some describe it, is a bit like a golf ball. And it's soon going to be the size of the sun in comparison, in terms of its foundational importance to every aspect of life for those who are online.
Okay, I get it. In terms of, I'm away from the house, I want to manage my electricity usage at the home. I get how you'll do that online. Maybe start the car, maybe put the garage door up. My toothbrush?
Your toothbrush. In fact, you can even buy a toothbrush now that will tell you, because it's hooked up through the internet, when to change the bristles, when to clean it, how often you brush your teeth. And all of that data is being collected somewhere by the private company that sold you that toothbrush to make sure that you're practicing good dental hygiene.
Okay. Edward Snowden, his revelations a few years back really had a significant effect on how much people now trust the internet. You actually measured the so-called Snowden effect. What did you find out?
Well, what we found out is that in the 24 countries that we surveyed, more than 60% of those we surveyed had heard of Edward Snowden, which suggests that hundreds of millions of people have heard of Edward Snowden. And if they didn't hear about it then, they certainly know about him now because there's a new movie coming out. But what we tried to measure by looking at behavioral data as well as survey data in our survey as well as other surveys is, did Edward Snowden change the way people behave online? And what we found was rather dramatic, that A lot of people, for example, started using the Tor Onion browser, which essentially gives you a concealed identity online when you go surfing. It also allows you to access all kinds of sites that you can't access through Google, for example. What we also found is that post-Snowden, more and more people start self-censoring what they do online because they're more aware that what they say to their friends, the emails they communicate might be read by somebody else, including Big Brother and government.
So they trust online a lot less now than they did
They
a few
trust
years ago.
online a lot less now, and that's been reinforced by, very well publicized hacks into private corporations, data sites, U.S. government, Canadian government,
National Committee.
Democratic National Committee. I think we're all becoming much more aware of the fact that this is not a secure form of communication.
What's the dark net?
The dark net, to put it very simply, is that part of the net that you cannot access through ordinary web browsers.
So how do you access it?
So you will access it through, there are a number of different kinds of browsers that you can use. The most popular is the so-called Tor or Onion router. And what it does is you have a hidden identity when you go online, and you can access sites that are not normally visible through Google. And it's where, you find a lot of child porn sites. It's where bad guys go to sell all kinds of nefarious services.
So it's infused with criminal activity, essentially.
Exactly.
And I'm told it went up, the usage of the dark net went up 300% post-Snowden.
Yes, it did.
Correct?
Yes, it
Almost
did.
300%.
Yeah.
Do we care about the privacy concerns of people who inhabit the dark web?
Well, the public does. The public has a very sort of ambivalent view of the dark web, and this is something we picked up in the survey data. First of all, most people know that it's there. Most people don't use it, but more and more people are using it. And the concern is that bad things happen on the dark web. I mean, it is the criminal underworld. It's that forest floor where bad things happen. There are lots of predators. But at the same time, the dark web is hugely important for people who live in countries where you have repressive governments like Iran, like China, Pakistan, just to name a few, Russia.
It's a way of communicating away from the prying eyes of totalitarian and other kinds of bad governments.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you want to weigh in on the great debate, I guess, that's happening in online circles right now about whether Edward Snowden is a patriot or a traitor?
Well, that's a question we're going to ask in our next survey. We've been doing these surveys now for 3 years. We're going to be doing another one this year. And one of the questions we want to ask is exactly as you put it, is he a traitor or a patriot?
What does the surveyor think?
Well, the surveyor, I think it's a bit of both, actually. And that may sound equivocal, but I think we all have sort of ambivalent feelings. On the one hand, he put people at risk, there's no question about it. But on the other hand, with the information that he put out, he's made us much more aware of what's happening online. And it's not just governments who are snooping, but quite frankly, we have growing concerns about how corporations, private corporations, are collecting data from us.
Well,
online.
let me mention one of them, Yahoo.
Yes.
It has emerged that last year they secretly built a custom software program to search all of its customers' incoming email for specific information at the request of the U.S. government. What is the rational response to such information?
The rational response is, why the hell did you do it? And the fact of the matter is, if you spend any time in Silicon Valley, there was a time when lots of companies were cozying up to the U.S. government, including, for that matter, Apple, under its previous leadership, in part because, governments were going to private corporations and saying, help us catch the bad guys. And many of these companies do business with government. And I think they were certainly not looking out for the concerns, the privacy concerns of their consumers. And, privacy now is important. And certainly the big companies have got that. Apple has got that message. Google has got that message. When you sign up for their services, you're asked questions about, what kinds of information are you prepared to hand over or not, as the case may be. But I think, it points to the harsh reality that your data's not safe, even if you think it's safe.
Here's a quote from you in the book. "The internet works because it is built on a foundation of digital social capital that contains 6 basic elements: security, privacy, inclusion, reliability, correct content, and safety." And you tell us that this social capital is eroding right now. And I wonder which of those 6 things we just outlined do you think is the most important to the average user?
Privacy. There's no question that privacy matters to people. That comes out very strongly in our public opinion surveys, and that's true in every country, including, by the way, repressive countries like China, although obviously citizens there are aware of what their government is doing. There's no question about that. But privacy does matter, and when privacy is compromised, and when you have these highly publicized cases, people start changing their behavior. And our point in the book is that the internet only works because you trust it. You trust it to keep your communications relatively secure. You trust it because when you go to sites to either buy something or talk to someone, that you're actually dealing with a legitimate corporation, or you're actually talking to your friends or somebody you believe to be who they are.
We trust it to bank on it, for goodness sakes.
And we trust it, for the most part, for banking, although I know some people who won't bank online for the very reason that you mentioned.
And yet, you want to look at that board? I mean, in the time that we've been on the air here, I think there's probably, 3,000 or 4,000 more internet users. So it does not appear as if the privacy concerns that people may legitimately have are keeping them away from actually signing up and using the internet.
No, it's a bit like the stock market, right? We all, or many of us, play on the stock market. The stock market generates wealth. People think that they can, more or less game the system, but nobody has absolute assurance in the system. And the day is going to come. I mean, we have these major attacks that have taken place, but by the same token, they have, affected private corporation. They haven't had major national effects. But imagine if there's an attack that puts all of the lights out in the city of Toronto, or messes with traffic patterns, or there's an attack on, for that matter, the air control over at Pearson Airport. That is going to have, potentially catastrophic consequences. And the problem is that governments, bad guys who are sometimes supported by governments, the so-called mercenaries of the internet, who are guns for hire or hackers for hire, are going to, the more it becomes a wild, wild west, the more trust is eroded, and people will stop using it. And we actually have some evidence, pretty hard evidence, because it came up in a couple of our surveys, that people are not only self-censoring what they do online, but they're taking themselves offline.
You've mentioned all 3 of the following: governments, corporations, and criminals. Of those 3, whom should we fear the most?
I think it's probably fair to say that if you're in an authoritarian regime, you fear the government most. It's not so much a matter of fear, it's who do you trust? And I think it's a problem for governments, because citizens aren't trusting them to hold their data, right? We've had well-publicized attacks, even in this country, where our own private data has been compromised. And that's happening all the time. When it comes to private companies, one of the things that comes out in the survey data is that people trust private corporations less than they do their own governments.
In spite of the fact that these numbers continue to roll over.
That's right.
you do tell us 13% of the people that you surveyed use the internet less now than they did a few years ago. Do you know why that is?
It's because they don't trust it.
It's distrust.
And they may have, they may have experienced, an event that cost them heavily in their pocketbooks. Somebody who was doing online banking, whose account was compromised. But that's a good question, and it certainly can be, a subject of future surveys. Why did you take yourself offline? And sometimes it's young people, quite frankly, who worry about some of the things they've, put out, whether it's on Facebook or other social media, that they feel is going to come back and haunt them.
We have had the former Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario sitting in that chair saying that when she gives presentations to high schools all over Ontario, or when she used to do it, she would ask that question: how many of you in this room have ever texted, for example, to young girls, a picture of yourself topless to your boyfriend? And you're shocked how many hands go up, and then, the fear after that. How many really trust that boyfriend not to share that with their friends? Exactly. And suddenly a light goes on that they hadn't, it had not occurred to them before that could happen. Better encryption technology, would that encourage, do you think, people's trust in the internet?
Well, the encryption technology is getting much better. And the real question is, who has access to those encryption keys? And certainly my view is that the user, the private user, and this would certainly be the view of Apple, is that the private user has sole exclusive control over those encryption keys. No backdoors to governments, no backdoors to, for that matter, private corporations who are providing those services. That you hold the keys to the door of your house, nobody else has a copy unless you give it to them. But the debate now, and it was a debate after those terrorist attacks in California, where the government wanted to get the encryption key to an Apple phone, and Apple said, no, we're not going to give it to you. The government, or the FBI, eventually found a way to bust the encryption because it wasn't an iPhone 6, it was an iPhone 4, I think. The encryption wasn't quite as good, but I think the real people who've looked at this say, no, you don't give the government backdoors to encryption. There are other ways, quite frankly, that they can go after the bad guys. And if you give the keys to government, you can't trust the government to keep them secure. We've just had an incident yesterday where the National Security Agency, one of their contractors, got a whole bunch of software that the NSA is using to bust encryption in other countries, when they go and spy on them. And so, the issue is, people have looked at this, say no backdoors, no access to encryption keys. There's a Harvard study that came out recently that makes the point, and I think it's a very important point, is that as we move to the Internet of Things, there are other ways law enforcement officials can monitor the activities of criminals, through cars, for that matter, through cameras, other objects that are hooked up to the internet.
So make them do that as opposed to...
So make them do that as opposed to, compromising personal communications.
Let's figure out who attacks whom. The difference between a cyber attack and cyber threat, what is it?
A cyber attack is... there's a lot of debate about this. A major cyber attack is generally an attack against an institution. It could be a private corporation whose data is compromised, a big bank, for example, like Morgan Stanley, that was subject to a cyber attack. Institutions of government. A cyber threat.
Theft, I should have said, cyber theft.
A theft is is usually what happens after the attack takes place in the sense that if data is stolen and compromised. And sometimes cyber attacks simply are trying to shut the system down. They're not trying to steal data.
Just mischief.
It's just mischief.
You do tell us 80% of cyber attacks could be prevented if internet users were to improve their digital hygiene. What does that mean?
That's it's a bit like brushing your teeth, right? Just as you want to change your toothbrush regularly, you want to change your password regularly. I mean, that is very simple. Online hygiene, and you know what we're finding, it's more and more users are in fact doing that.
Do you do that?
I do that.
You change your password frequently?
I change my password regularly.
How often?
Once a month. I should probably do it more often than that.
How do you remember what the new password is?
We all have challenges doing that, and sometimes you know, we write them down on little stickies and put them on the screen behind us as a very prominent person in Silicon Valley did relatively recently.
If you put your new password on a sticky on your computer, that kind of defeats the purpose of it.
It does indeed. But I think, you know, we've all developed little techniques for remembering our passwords, and the technology there is getting better. I mean, for example, with your iPhone or iPad, you can use now a biometric
right.
thumbprint.
Use your thumbprint.
And I think the technology is going to be moving in that direction for precisely the reason that we all have difficulty remembering our passwords. And we end up changing them more often than not, because when we forget them, we have to go back and
That's right.
reset them. So
let's finish up here on basically who runs the internet now. Can you answer that? Who's in charge of it?
Well, the good thing is nobody's really in charge of it. There's a corporation, it's called the Internet Corporation for Assigned Name and Numbers. That's a bit of a mouthful. And it manages the top-level domain system, .ca, .org.
Where are they out of?
.com. They operate as a not-for-profit corporation in the state of California. Until very recently, in fact, just a few days ago, they were operating under a license from the U.S. government. The U.S. government, it was a very contentious issue. It was construed as kind of giving the internet away, which it wasn't, on the part of critics of the Obama administration. But essentially, the U.S. has said, we're not going to even play that symbolic role. So you just operate as an independent, not-for-profit corporation on your own.
Do you like the way the internet is currently governed in that respect?
I think we could get better about it. When we talk about internet governance, that's the technology, right? ICANN manages the root files of the internet. But there are all sorts of other issues that have to do with how we manage the internet. We're seeing that in the debate over Bill C-51 in terms of what surveillance agencies can or shouldn't be doing when it comes to hoovering up data. And what a lot of people talk about, Steve, is we have to move towards an inclusive, multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. And some countries have done that. I mean, Brazil, for example, introduced legislation a number of years ago, Marco Civil, where they basically put together citizens, activists, not-for-profit, private corporations, and government people, all sitting in the same room, saying, we're going to write Brazil's internet policy, and we're going to do it together, and it's going to be messy. It's not consultation. We talk a lot about consultation. It's not government's consulting. It's actually, the government is simply one of many stakeholders who are thrashing out new policy and saying, this is something we can live with, but we're going to go back and look at it again.
Did it work?
It has worked pretty well in Brazil. Other countries are adopting it. New Zealand, for example, is going for the multi-stakeholder model at the national level of internet governance. Italy is looking at it. At the international level, we've seen a number of exercises. A number of years ago, Brazil hosted something called the Net Mundial Conference, where they tried to do something similar at the national level to sort of, write a global policy for the internet. it's very messy. It's still in its early stages. But I think, when it comes to our own country, Canada, we shouldn't, given the importance of the internet and where it's going, and how it's going to be even more important, to innovation and growth in this country, we're going to have to look at a new model of how we govern the internet, and the multi-stakeholder model, I think, is the way to go.
In which case, can I, Control Room, beg you for another couple of minutes, because I do want to ask this last question, which is, I think, key to the whole thing, and that is, how do we make the internet safer, more private and more secure, and yet more open and inclusive? That's a lot of sort of conflicting goals. How do we achieve all of that?
Well, one of the ways we're going to get there is through better governance, more inclusive governance of the kind I just talked about, the multi-stakeholder model. And when it comes to technology and things like encryption, adopting the norm, no backdoors when it comes to encryption. But there is no technological quick fix to this. One of the problems we face is that the technology is evolving so quickly. And the internet 5 years from now may look very different from the internet now.
Almost surely will.
Not only will it, but the technology that drives it will also be different. And so, if we're going to wrap our heads around this, we're going to have to move away from what I would call the traditional sort of regulatory approach, where governments, have parliamentary hearings and then write new legislation. We're going to have to move to a much more sort of inclusive, civic engagement model of how we write policy, how we develop new norms, how we engage citizens to make them more aware, not only of the risks they face online, and I think most citizens are becoming aware of that, but how you address those risks and how you develop a system that we're never going to trust it perfectly, right? Accidents will happen, bad things will happen, but we don't want to destroy what is the eighth wonder of the world in the 21st century. And the hidden wiring of globalization.
And you chronicle it all in Look Who's Watching, Surveillance, Treachery, and Trust Online. Fen Osler Hampson. Good to see you here at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.